create and require, not include, the router class. As we saw before, every request is now going through one file, the front controller, and we're using the query string to get the request URL or route that we want to use. So now we need to decide which controller and which action inside that controller we're going to execute based on that route. The router is the component which takes the request URL or the route and decides what to do with it. It's the central part of the framework. We're going to create a router class to do this, and we'll be using this class in our front controller. So here we have our router class, which is empty at the moment, but we'll be filling this in as we go along. And I've placed it in the core folder, because this is the core part of the framework. In PHP, it's not required to have a class in a separate file, but it has some distinct advantages. First, it's easier to find a specific class in your code, so it's easier to maintain. And one of the great things about having classes in separate files is you can load the class files automatically, and we'll see this in a moment. To use the class, we need to load the file that it's in, and we can include or require that file. So what's the difference? Well, if the file is not found, require will stop the script and produce an error, whereas include will just carry on. Seeing as we definitely need the class for our code to work, we'll be using require. So let's have a look at our front controller. I've commented out the code from before, and what we're doing is requiring the core router file. And just to show that it's actually working and that we're making sure we're definitely loading the correct file, I'm just going to echo out the name of the class, which we'll obviously not use as part of the code, but just to make sure we've got the file name correctly loaded. So let's have a look at that in a browser. And there we are. So we're definitely loading the correct file and instantiating an object of the class. And now we have the beginnings of our router.